Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Can we have a thread where we share time slip stories, or strange surreal lapses in reality? This happened when I was 15. Nothing like this has ever happened since, and I am always reluctant to tell people from fear that they might think there is something wrong with me. My grandmother had recently died and my parents were tasked with going to her house to document all her assets. She was an insular woman who had lived by herself quite some time, reading and rereading newspapers years out of date. Her house was in the country, set back from a dense forest tree line about 50 meters on all sides. Old and neglected, like Grandma, it was soon to be overcome and forgotten by nature's course. In fact, her house would not have been out of place as a set for a horror film. Needless to say, we didn't visit her much. It was myself, my brother, who was 10 at the time, and our parents who went that day. I remember it being a pleasant day as the weather was fine and sunny and we didn't fight as a family, which was a rare occurrence indeed. After driving for what seemed like miles on her dirt driveway, we arrived at Grandma's house sometime in the mid-afternoon. My parents, eager to finish such a dreary task on a Saturday, immediately went into the house. My brother and I stayed outside. The house was situated on a clearing, and the tree line surrounding the house seemed impenetrable to both foot and light. To curb the boredom, we decided to play some hide and seek. I let my brother hide first since he would cry and complain otherwise. I close my eyes and lean onto a tree. 1. I hear my brother's footsteps fade as he scurries away. 2. The wind was picking up, whooshing past my ear and ringing the chimes on the veranda. 3. This is where an overwhelming sense of being alone swept over me. I felt strange, like that heart flutter you sense something is behind you, but I kept counting anyway. I open my eyes and look around. The weather was much bleaker now. The landscape had become dull as thick, gray clouds blocked the sun overhead. I felt alone, like I was the only person in the universe alone. And so I began to call out my brother's name. No answer. Come on now, I don't want to play anymore, come out please. No answer. I wanted to cry. I searched for him everywhere as the weather seemed to worsen. The wind was becoming really loud in my ears, drowning out my screams. It was kind of like one of those nightmares where you want to run or catch up to something but your legs are made of cement or something. Things didn't seem real, like the color palette and atmosphere all too closely resembled the work of a tortured surrealist painter. The darkness beyond the pine tree line was unrelenting and the tree tops swayed, as if performing violent brush strokes of gray and black on the sky. I wandered cautiously to the edge of the clearing. I called my brother's name, still no reply. As I gazed into the forest, I felt my heart jump out my chest from the eeriness of it all. I turned around only to see nothing. No house, no car, nothing. The clearing in which the house had stood was now only occupied by a vast, lonely oak swaying in the wind. Leaves swirled and danced around me as I frantically searched for the driveway which we came in on. It wasn't there. Just empty acre of land surrounded by thick wood. Screaming and crying, I pushed into the darkness of the forest. The ground was soft from the buildup of dead brown pine needles, so the nightmare of running in wet cement felt all too familiar. It was dark in there. What little light could escape the clouds did not penetrate the evergreens. I didn't look around me, only forward, dodging trees. Up ahead I saw a clearing. Maybe it was the road? Maybe it was another property? My pace picked up at the thought of ending this nightmare. Lunging forward, I was birthed through the tree line into the clearing. Laying face down on the ground, I slowly looked up to take in my surroundings. It was like everything had snapped back into place. The weather was fine again. Grandma's house was back. The car was there and my brother cheekily peered his head from behind a tree to gloat that I didn't find him. I knelt and put my face in my hands and breathed deeply, contemplating what I just experienced. I still think about it every day. I couldn't sleep for a long time after, and oftentimes have trouble sleeping now because of it.
I have one from almost 20 years ago, so sorry but the details are mostly lost to memory. It was late 94 or early 95, I'm sure of that from who I was dating at the time. It was a Thursday, not sure why I remember that, but I know it was a Thursday. Something happened that morning that felt like time skipped or hiccuped or something. I don't even remember what I was doing, but I remember the sensation. Not like déjà vu, more like a quick expansion and contraction. Like taking a quick deep breath and blowing it back out, but instead of just your chest expanding, everything expanded. Now we all get weird feelings occasionally, we write them off as still being half asleep, dizzy, hungry, whatever, and we don't think about them really, and we don't talk about them. That's where this turns into the X territory. That morning in physics class we were talking about relativity and time dilation, and I made a joking offhand comment that time had dilated for me that morning. A girl next to me chuckled and said something like, "Me too." Then everyone kinda got quiet and we compared stories. A lot of the students had a similar feeling, and as far as we could work out it was at the same time for all of us, but everyone had pretty much just ignored it till attention was drawn. A few of us spent the day asking around the school, trying to see if others had felt it as well, without leading them in. By the end of the day we had reached a general consensus that something odd happened that morning. I think in the end we rationalized it as probably being a minor earthquake or a massive pressure drop or something, but seriously, it felt like time changed for a couple seconds and snapped back. That was no earthquake.
Only thing that ever happened to me that felt like time missing was one morning I woke up and sat in bed. I remember the time being 6:12 a.m. from looking at the clock in acknowledgement that yes, I hear the alarm. As I'm finishing the thought, the clock said 7:27 a.m. and the alarm was off. I chalked it up to just falling back asleep sitting up and just shrug it off, but certain things bugged me about it to the day. I woke up instantly, no grogginess, to lull me back to sleep. I don't sleep once the alarm starts, I stay in a semi-daze listening to it and planning my day, not quite ready to get up yet. Time feels slower as I am deep in my mind, always aware that I'm awake and thinking. I wouldn't have fallen back to sleep sitting up with the alarm keeping me tethered. I can't sleep sitting up, no matter how tired. My alarm will not stop unless you hit the button, if not it will go on all day until it died. I was still in the actual thought of, yeah, I get it alarm, throughout the experience. I started thinking it at 6:12 and finished at 7:27. The human mind doesn't hit pause on thoughts like that when you fall asleep.
About 3 or 4 years ago. Sleeping in my bed, suddenly wake up. Glance over at the digital clock, it's 3 a.m. or sometime around then. As I'm still looking at the clock, the minutes start to go by like seconds. I watch in disbelief as the clock ticks past more than 30 minutes in a few seconds. This is very startling, so I reach over to turn on my bedside light, while keeping my eye on the clock. As soon as I switch on the light, the clock goes back to a normal progression of time, and at the same moment I hear a thud in my closet. Feel a bit braver now with the light in the room, so I go check out what's up in the closet. Hand on the doorknob, I feel my nerves as I push open the door. I see the hatch that leads to the attic inside my closet is wide open. Nope, the fuck out of the closet and then out of my room. Lay on the couch in the living room all night with the lights on. No sleep until the sun comes out. The next day, I notice that the clock in my bedroom matches time with all the rest of the clocks in the house, despite what I rationalized must have been some sort of digital fuck-up. I still don't know what the fuck was going on that night.
A couple of years ago I was taken to a symphony rendition of famous songs from famous kung fu movies. I went because, well, like with all bad decisions, there was a woman involved. Anyway, during the performance, after scanning the audience multiple times, and running through all the good composers I'd rather have seen performed by a symphony orchestra, I was drawn to the current soloist. She was elegant and swan-necked. She sat erect but not ridged behind the equally long-necked Chinese instrument, and slowly pulled and pushed to bow across the single string. The sound wasn't really nice to hear, and the large screen flanking the stage just conflicted with the action as flashes of fight scenes from Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or some other film beckoned for attention. My attention, however, was focused on her, well, not her, but the bow, and the gentle swaying of her hips behind the instrument. As I watched, I tunneled into that small fragment of the wide picture. All I could see was the length of the bow, and a slightly shimmering string. It filled all of my perception. There was no sound. There was nothing else, except for a thought. It didn't feel like mine. It told me that right then. Right then I had to make a decision. It also told me that the choice of that decision would mean immediate death or not. I don't really recall what happened after I heard the voice, but when I came back to the concert, a different soloist had taken the stage and was right in the middle of her song, and I was sweating and gripping the arms of the chair so hard that the tips of my fingers hurt. I had to get up immediately and go for a couple of shots of vodka. Aside from coming back from who knows where to find my unconscious self standing at a traffic light deciding which car to throw myself in front of, this was the most scary experience of my life.
Be 9 years old. Living in the northern USA. Best bro lives next to a huge forest. We usually end up playing in there since there's no real borders to it, so you can walk straight into it from his yard. By this time we've played in it for several years, and as times go we move longer and longer in. Early autumn, we decided to play hide and seek. I ran away. We're about a 15-minute walk from his house straight into the forest. See this bush with a small hole under it, crawl into it. Laying there, listening to the forest. All of a sudden the sounds go quiet. I get this really weird metallic taste in my mouth. Suddenly I hear footsteps. I press myself down under the bush and cover my mouth so my buddy won't find me. Footsteps come closer. They start to get slower. Oh shit, I hope he doesn't find me. From under my bush I watch someone with old-style shoes, big buckles, walk past my bush. WTF. I lay there for a couple of minutes more, listening closely for the footsteps, but they didn't come back. By this time I'm a bored kid, so I jump out of there and realize how fucking dark it is. I start to walk to where my bro counted. No one's there. Really hard to see because it's a thick forest and not much moonlight. Shout Ryan several times, but no answer. Well, I'm heading home. I shout thinking he's fucking with me. Nope, nothing. I find the 3 stones landmark we have and start moving towards his house. As I walk I see light, like someone with flashlights. He's here. Some dude and a cop walks towards me and leads me back to my worried parents. I've been gone for over 6 hours.
I was at a friend's house, partying like we did every weekend. I'll admit I tossed back a few beers and took some shots, but never was I in a state you would consider intoxicated. A few if my friends were trashed, even the owner of the house who usually stayed sober to make sure we didn't fuck anything up. After the alcohol was depleted, a few people left, but a few others and I decided to spend the night. Everyone split off into rooms, and I took the living room couch to avoid the hangover madness that would ensue in the morning. I remember feeling tingly before I fell asleep, though I thought nothing of it as I drifted off. I awoke to the sound of a slamming door, one of my friends leaving the room in which he had slept to rush to the bathroom. Minutes later, the other 5 or so occupants did the same, running to toilets, sinks, trash cans, or outside. My best friend decides to purge himself on the front porch, so I decide to check on him since I want to smoke a cigarette anyway and we're not allowed to smoke in the house. Before I can even fully remove myself from the couch, I hear a loud bang, followed by screaming. I rush to the door, going as fast as my chubby legs will carry me. Our host beats me to it however, so I just take place behind him and look over his shoulder. Best friend is laying at the bottom of the stairs, clutching his leg and grunting in pain. Host friend takes off down the stairs, asking best friend if his leg feels broken. Never got to hear the response because crashing noises start coming from inside the house. I slide my body out of the door frame and look towards the living room. There's a guy laid out in the floor, blood puddling from his mouth. WTF? Host friend comes in behind me, opening his mouth to say something before he notices the guy in the floor. Pretty soon everyone starts to return to the living room, thinking they're done emptying themselves until they spy the guy in the floor. Puking resumes, though no one attempts to leave the room. Everyone is silent for what feels like hours. I've always been the one in the group to say what no one else wants to, so I clear my throat and look at host friend. You think he's dead? A few people give me looks like I just said something they couldn't comprehend. I know they were all thinking it, but they look shocked to hear the question voiced. Host friend just stares at me like he doesn't know me. After about 10 minutes of that, I approach the guy in the floor and kneel down so I can see signs of life. I'm not any kind of medical professional, so I don't know how to check for a pulse, so I just put my finger under his nose to see if I feel a breeze, then realize my idiocy and chuckle at myself. Can't breathe with blood in your lungs. Host friend touches me on the shoulder, about making me piss myself because I hadn't noticed him move close to me.
I called an ambulance for him, so let them come deal with it.
I just nod and stand up, then walk to the couch and sit down. Everyone's pretty shaky and no one wants to talk. We all just wait in silence. Paramedics and police show up about 30 minutes later, and host goes out to talk to them. One policeman and a medic come in to check the body. They spend several minutes whispering to each other, then the medic walks back out. Then, shit gets crazy. Cops coming rushing into the house, guns drawn, and start lining us up on the wall like we're about to be executed, firing squad style. One older cop walks by each of us, staring us in the face, then stops and sighs.
Any of you boys like to go fishing?
A couple of the guys raise their hands, the rest just stare at the cop like he's an idiot.
Then, you'll know what a pain in the ass it is to have your nice, peaceful evening interrupted. Now I had me a big one on the line when I get a call saying I got to come investigate a murder.
Police divide us up and question us. Questioned by 3 different officers. After I am done I go to sit on the couch. Drift off to sleep after a while. Wake to the sound of door banging. I think it's the angry cops. Nope. Friends rushing for puking areas. Events repeat with myself just kind of going along, thinking the previous instance was a dream, déjà vu. This time, instead of going to sleep I try to leave the house. And as soon as I open the door, I am blinded by a bright light. I hear a bang, and open my eyes to see if cops were shooting at me. I'm back on the damn couch. I just kind of lay there for a minute, my brain trying to process what is happening. I've had déjà vu moments before, but I usually don't remember much until the DV event happens. I remember this clearly. Maybe this is like extreme déjà vu, and I need to do something different to get out of it. This time, I shoot out the door before my best friend is even fully out of the doorway. This is where everything starts, so maybe if I alter this it will fix things. My best friend is leaning against the rail. He's not stumbling or anything, so now I'm curious how he falls. The whole time we're out there, I keep my eyes on him like a hawk. He starts to act like it's making him nervous, but he doesn't say anything. I'm starting to get impatient, thinking it couldn't have taken this long for him to fall last time. Just then, I see it. Best friend turns to go down the stairs, stepping on his shoelaces and tripping. I grab him and haul him back onto the porch.
Thanks, man. I was almost a goner.
I laugh and lean up against the railing. The railing gives under my weight and I fall backwards of the porch, my head smacking against a rock and knocking me unconscious. Wake up on the fucking couch. I tried a lot of different things to break this cycle. I tried to save my best friend from falling, even went so far as to keep him from going out on the porch, but it always failed and I was always either knocked out or falling asleep somewhere and waking up on that damn couch. Then I moved on to other possibilities. Tried to save a strange man's life, only to find that he was already dead. Tried to wait to see how he ended up in the living room, but he only appeared when none of us were looking. Eventually it even escalated to where all we had to do was blink and he was there. I tried pleading my innocence to the cops, confessing to the murder, and one time out of frustration I just grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed whoever happened to cross my path. It all ended the same way, with me back in that fucking couch. Finally, after my many failed attempts over what felt like thousands of years, I decided to do the only thing left I had to do. Lay on that damn couch. I didn't move when I woke up, just laid there as the events repeated. When it came time for the body to appear, I just stared at the spot where it would be laying. I blinked, but the body never appeared. I covered my eyes, hid behind a pillow, even pretended to sleep, but no body. The ambulance arrived, took best friend to hospital. Police officer told us to repair the porch before it happened to someone else, then left, and still no fucking body. It took me a while to be sure that this wasn't another false outcome that would end with me waking up on the couch again. I felt a cold chill on my neck, and then host friend came in and looked surprised to see me. Inquired about his surprised look. Told me he was just surprised to see me because I hadn't been there since best friend went to hospital. That was like 10 minutes ago.
Anon, that was a week ago.
Here is one involving no other than Carl Jung himself. Taken from Carl Gustav Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections, pp 284-286. Even on the occasion of my first visit to Ravenna in 1913, the tomb of Galla Placidia seemed to me significant and unusually fascinating. The second time, 20 years later, I had the same feeling. Once more I fell into a strange mood in the tomb of Galla Placidia. Once more I was deeply stirred. I was there with an acquaintance, and we went directly from the tomb into the baptistry of the Orthodox. Here, what struck me first was the mild blue light that filled the room. Yet I did not wonder about this at all. I did not try to account for its source, and so the wonder of this light without any visible source did not trouble me. I was somewhat amazed because, in place of the windows I remembered having seen on my first visit, there were now 4 great mosaic frescoes of incredible beauty which, it seemed, I had entirely forgotten. I was vexed to find my memory so unreliable. The mosaic on the south side represented the baptism in the Jordan. The second picture, on the north, was of the passage of the children of Israel through the Red Sea. The third, on the east, soon faded from my memory. It might have shown Naaman being cleansed of leprosy in the Jordan. There was a picture on this theme in the Old Marian Bible in my library, which was much like the mosaic. The fourth mosaic, on the west side of the baptistry, was the most impressive of all. We looked at this one last. It represented Christ holding out his hand to Peter, who was sinking beneath the waves. We stopped in front of this mosaic for at least 20 minutes and discussed the original ritual of baptism, especially the curious archaic conception of it as an initiation connected with real peril of death. Such initiations were often connected with the peril of death and so served to express the archetypal idea of death and rebirth. Baptism had originally been a real submersion which at least suggested the danger of drowning. I retained the most distinct memory of the mosaic of Peter sinking, and to this day can see every detail before my eyes. The blue of the sea, the individual chips of the mosaic, the inscribed scrolls proceeding from the mouths of Peter and Christ, which I attempted to decipher. After we left the baptistry, I went promptly to Alinari to buy photographs of the mosaics, but could not find any. Time was pressing. This was only a short visit, and so I postponed the purchase until later. I thought I might order the pictures from Zurich. When I was back home, I asked an acquaintance who was going to Ravenna to obtain the pictures for me. He could not locate them, for he discovered that the mosaics I had described did not exist. The memory of those pictures is still vivid to me. The lady who had been there with me long refused to believe that what she had seen with her own eyes had not existed. As we know, it is very difficult to determine whether, and to what extent, two persons simultaneously see the same thing. In this case, however, I was able to ascertain that at least the main features of what we both saw had been the same. This experience in Ravenna is among the most curious events in my life. It can scarcely be explained. A certain light may possibly be cast on it by an incident in the story of Empress Galla Placidia. During a stormy crossing from Byzantium to Havana in the worst of winter, she made a vow that if she came through safely, she would build a church and have the perils of the sea represented in it. She kept this vow by building the Basilica of San Giovanni in Ravenna and having it adorned with mosaics. In the early Middle Ages, San Giovanni, together with its mosaics, was destroyed by fire, but in the Ambrosiana in Milan is still to be found a sketch representing Galla Placidia in a boat.
I was driving home from work one afternoon, around noon or so. I worked the early shift at a local grocery store. I'm driving to my apartment that my GF, now my wife, and I had lived together in for about a year. I hear on the local radio that there was a critical car accident on the road that we had to take to get to the apartment, but I drove all the way home and didn't see an accident at all. Traffic was surprisingly good for the time of day. If you're from Austin and know of Oltorf, then you know about the traffic all around I-35. Well, I get home and call my GF to let her know I'm there, and I tell her about how the radio mentioned the wreck, but nothing was there. We chalked it up to a misplayed broadcast, which could have been, and this was just a coincidence. Well, she leaves work at 5 p.m. and lo and behold she calls me, and says that there's been a major accident. We never really talked about it after that. For the record, when I was younger I experienced déjà vu on the regular, but it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I could actually predict an event. My best example of this was when some friends from California visited, and we took them to South Congress for dinner. I predicted two events about 30 seconds before they happened. Needless to say, it creeped out my friends. That was the last time I had visions so far out. Lately I have lucid dreams and they are amazing. I really need to keep a dream journal. I've seen things that would make you cry for the future.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.